What's going on, guys? Just wanted to make a quick video on a weird issue that I had. So for a while, when this car was coming to a stop, or if I went to reverse, I would get this really loud clunk. And at first I thought it was something in the driveline, maybe a diff backlash issue or something. It really kind of sounded like almost like a sprung metal sound that's kind of like boom. And I can cut to some clips. All right, we're gonna hear this thing. Hear that, man? Oh my goodness. No more clunks, but now we got clicks. I'll come to a stop here. Let's get a little bit of speed here. So basically what's happening is the axle nut, this guy right here, which is a 32 millimeter hex. I think it's, I'll put it up on the screen, actually, you know what? I actually got the replacement part right here. So these are the axle nuts, and that is the part number. I actually went to the dealership and got this just because I was kind of getting different information online. So originally, I just hit this thing with a torque wrench and just kind of snugged it up a little bit. Didn't even really feel like it moved, and that got rid of my clunk. But now, if I drive for 30-40 minutes and I've got the windows down and I'm kind of coming to a stop, I can start to hear axle click. Now, this is pretty common on the G35, G37, 350Z, all those cars. And the fix is to essentially replace this axle nut and grease the spline. So that is what we're going to be doing today. Okay, so just knock the wheel off. Gonna hit it with some WD-40 on these threads. Gonna let it sit for a little bit. Okay, so got the axle nut off. Definitely took a little bit more force than I thought. This actually is a different design than the 350Z one. There's no real videos on the axle nuts on this car. I know Ed Boy's got one on, I believe, one of the SUVs, but I don't think he actually showed taking it off. But anyways, on the 350Z, they've got like a little retainer and some washers, and they recommend replacing that nut with looks like a castle nut, I think they call it. This one looks basically the same. I would reuse this, but I already bought new ones, so I'm just gonna slap those on there. So I looked it up online, and the ones with a little hole for a cotter pin are reusable, and the ones without usually have a little space here, and you're supposed to indent that, and that will prevent it from backing out. So I probably will reuse that nut. I'm going to try and bash this with a rubber hammer, which will probably not work. And if that doesn't work, and I'm actually pretty sure that's what this little hole is for, I'm gonna pull out my punch set and we'll hit it with a real hammer. And the reason why you don't hit it with just a hammer just flat on here is because it might deform the edges, and that'll prevent you from getting the nut back on there. So I got my cheapo punch set, and while I've never used these and they look kind of thin, that is their intended use, so that should work. So hit it with 3 or 4 good whacks at the punch, popped right out. Just gonna clean up these threads, kind of clean up the surrounding area a bit, and grease it up and put it all back together. So on the Nissan TSB for the G37, G35, etc., they specify to use M77 Moly Coat grease. So I don't have any of that. I looked around, it's kind of expensive, and I've got this. So never used this before, just had it laying on the shelf. Can't remember why I bought it, but it'll be fine. I'm sure someone in the comments will have done this properly or knows how to do this properly, but this is what we're doing. Okay, so I just hit the axle out a little bit more, and I'm gonna try and get some grease onto those threads in the back there. You can see it's a little bit rusted, but that is how I saw someone do it on a 370Z. So that way you don't have to take out the whole axle. Okay, so I actually pushed the axle in a bit, and it's nice and soft now because I managed to get grease on maybe 50% of the splines, and on this side it's kind of hard to get at. So what I did is I made sure the car was relatively secure, put it in neutral, took the parking brake off, make sure the car is not going to rock at all. It could be quite dangerous, and then I just rotated it and got the other side. Kind of funny. So I was rotating this like 90 degrees at a time, and then looking from the back with a flashlight and getting a little bit of grease in there. And every time I turned it, it looked like it had fresh grease on it. And I realized that I had packed the front of this with grease, and the amount of travel this thing has, it was basically greasing the whole thing. So yeah, I think we're good. The original TSB that sent me down this path, it's a little confusing because some of them call for 76 foot-pounds and some of them call for 181 foot-pounds. And that is a pretty big gap. So I went to the factory service manual for the 2002 Q45, Q45, and it specifies a range between 151 and 204 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna kind of go in the middle, maybe like 180 foot-pounds, because now that I know this isn't a single-use nut, I can always retorque it, and I don't really want to put excess pressure on the bearing if I don't need to. Okay, so we got our axle nut torqued down to 186 foot-pounds. Cleaned up the hub a little bit. Time to put the wheel back on and see what this thing does. Okay, we got everything back together. And last but not least, our cotter pin. Didn't think I was gonna forget that, right? Of course, safety first, guys. I just put a little bend in it. That way you're not accidentally scratching the wheel as you slide it in there. It just goes in nice. Okay, so we got our cotter pin reinstalled. I think it's time to jack this thing down and go for a drive. All right. It's been a while since we did one of these. Oh, that wasn't good. Did you hear that? All right. So I put this thing into drive just now because we're gonna go take it for a quick test drive, and it made a clunk sound. So I put it in reverse, put it in drive a couple more times, and it seemed fine. But I just went and grabbed the torque wrench just in case, because it did seem to be intermittent when it was originally happening. So if we got to crank this thing up to 195 or whatever I had it before, then so be it. But this will be our test drive. So hopefully this video is in 20 minutes already. I wanted to talk about the car a little bit. So everything is running really well. I have so many little mini projects that I was going to film. I got a injector rebuild kit. I ordered a set of coilovers. And every time that I order parts of this thing, I find a good enough solution, right? I thought that this thing was clunking because of the front strut, and then it turns out it's an axle nut, right? So we fixed that, and problem solved, right? The car still drives fine. Barely makes any sound going over bumps. Like, I'm not going to replace the suspension if it's working fine. I mean, it would be kind of cool to lower the car a little bit, and it probably would help with traction a little bit, but still, it's one of those things where I know that these parts are going to sit on a shelf for a little bit. So basically, I keep buying stuff for this thing, and then it turns out I don't really use it, or I don't really need it. At least not yet. So, this car had a really bad clunk. I thought it was something in the suspension. I got some coilovers after seeing that I had some play in one of the struts. Turns out it's an axle nut, problem solved. I had a slight misfire. It would kind of stumble every once in a while, so I bought an injector rebuild kit. And then I ran a can of red line through it, and now it's driving fine. So it just kind of keeps happening. I bought 10 liters of Max Life ATF thinking that there was something in the transmission. Sure enough, it was connected to the misfire. Now that everything's running fine, the transmission's perfect. So it's kind of been hard for me to make one of these videos and actually have it come true. But all of these things are going to happen. So eventually I'm going to rebuild the injectors. We are going to be installing a set of BC coilovers. They should be here in a couple of weeks. I'm probably not going to install them right away because, like I said, this thing drives fine now. Come on, buddy. What are you doing? I mean, this thing just rips. It's just hard for me to mess with it when it's working so well. Like, I love this car. It drives so nice. Sheesh, makes all the right sounds. Gets good fuel economy. We're getting like 16.5 miles per gallon. I mean, come on, guys. What more can you want? I'm just going to the Canadian Tire here. This is my go-to spot. I'm just gonna do some really slow driving here. We're gonna roll the window down. Transmission shifts so good now. Axles are silent. It made that one clunk when I first put into drive. Now, to be fair, the clicking is actually when the car has been driving for a while. But usually it makes at least one. It is just so smooth. Yeah, I don't feel anything. I'm gonna go over here where we can really get like reverberation off the wall. I'm gonna put in reverse as well. Let's put the rear window down. Silent. But no clunks. Let's go backwards a bit. No, it's silent now. I was gonna do the other side, but like I said, I'm not gonna mess with things if they're working fine. All right, man. I think we're good, boys. Obviously, if you see another video and we're doing it again, you'll know that red and tacky probably isn't the right grease. I know I'm kind of breaking all the rules, and every Nissan fanboy, every guy with a 370Z is gonna be like, you need Molly grease, it's gonna explode or whatever. It really is just a sound issue. Anyways. Cool. All right. Well, red and tacky, new axle, not even a new axle nut. We reuse the axle nut. So just some grease, take it off, clean up the threads, torque it down, send it. Hell yeah, boys. I'm so happy with this thing. We are going to take this thing out to mission. I think there's a new night, I don't know if it's new or not, but new to me, called Tuner Night. And it's like a car meet and drag racing and drift. So I'm going to see if I can get this thing in. I think it is technically a class, so we would be going head to head with people, but it could be pretty cool. But anyways, that is going to do it for this video. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next one.